We got the cure, we got the answer to what's happening in society. We got the power to solutions and provide the healing that you need. We got the cure, we got the answer with discussions that will set you free. This is the Arc Republic, and you're listening to The Remedy. The Remedy. The Remedy.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is actually our inaugural show for a new show called The Remedy. The Remedy on Arc Republic is designed to focus more on the solutions rather than the problems and the issues and the topics. And I think that this is an excellent topic and conversation to open with. Today, I have Dr. Sherice Nelson and Dr. Alice Nicholas talking about when white women pose as Black women in the academic space. Now, all of us are academics. I will let Dr. Nicholas and Dr. Nelson introduce themselves, and we will get rolling. Thank y'all for coming, by the way.
Thank you for having us.
Everybody looks fantabulous and beautiful.
Well, I'll start first. I am Dr. Sherice Janaye Nelson. I'm originally from Oakland, California. I'm only historically Black college educated. I have a PhD in political science from Howard University, and I study Black women leadership, Black women as leaders. And then I also study the larger diaspora, meaning the Black experience for those in the diaspora. I have a book coming out 2021 called The Congressional Black Caucus, 50 Years of Fighting for Equality, on SUNY Press. That'll be out next year. And I'm currently a professor at Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Thank you so much, and welcome to the show.
My name is Dr. Alice Nicholas. I'm an Africologist and a professor. I teach at Cal State Dominguez Hills. I earned my BA and MA at Dominguez Hills, and actually my master's program was a unique form of study that I created. It was a Master of Arts in Africology. It was a struggle, but it got done. And then I earned my PhD in Africology and African American Studies at Temple University. As an Africologist, I'm always looking at what tools we can use to forward our liberation. And so in my research, I'm looking at the literature of African American women and looking at it as a liberatory tool, similar to like the quilt codes or the language that was used in the Underground Railroad. So you see just a picture, or you hear the name of a book without reading it, and you know that that book stands for Sankofa, or that book stands for revolution. So the book itself, or the title itself, versus the story.
Thank you so much, and welcome to the show, Dr. Nicholas. My name is Kaia Shivers, Dr. Shivers, and I am a professor at New York University, and I work and teach in the Liberal Studies Department. I teach writing. I'm a media scholar, and I study how people of African descent who as well identify as Black use media as a form of agency. I am a diasporist, meaning I do study the diaspora. So this topic actually is very interesting to me, and it affects me directly. So let us get in it. So last week, a professor by the name of Jessica Krug, who attends George Washington, or was a professor at George Washington University, focused on African and Caribbean and diaspora history, outed herself, saying that she has been living as a Jewish woman. I'm sorry, let me say that again, wait a minute. So Jessica Krug, a professor at George Washington University, came out and said through a post on Medium, saying that she had been living as a Black woman, but actually is a Jewish woman. And in her identifying as a Black woman, she has had many iterations of herself. She has been a Black woman. She has been a Bronx-born Latina. She has had all these different, or Afro-Latina, and she's had these identities. Then, shortly after that, a woman by the name of Satchel Cole, who is a racial and social justice advocate in Indiana, and also is founder of a food pantry, who also said she was Black, outed herself and said that she too was a white woman who had been living as a Black woman. Now, these two women are not anything new. Several years ago, a college professor by the name of Rachel Dolezal as well was discovered that she was living and identifying as a Black woman, and even taking a Nigerian name. And so remember a couple of years ago, that whole idea of, what was it called? Trans Blackness, or transracial, so on and so forth. But we're going to get specifically into this topic. So is it okay if I call you by your first name? Is that all right, Alice? Okay. So Alice and Sherice, what were your initial thoughts when you heard about Jessica Krug?
I laughed a little, because there's always this thing, oh, they want to be us until they don't, until the realness of Blackness comes around. But then the more I thought about it, the more enraged I got. I'm angry. It's infuriating. It's the fact that there are no repercussions for them. Black women are paying the price for the white women's actions. We have limited spacing. We know this is a patriarchal society. We already know that, but it's also a racist society. And so with all of these arguments about affirmative action being this quota system or whatever, even if it was, we're not meeting it. We are 13% of the population. We're less than 2% of the academy. So we're not even represented by ourselves in the academy. And then to have people co-opt those limited spaces, I was telling Sherice a little bit earlier, I have this theory that I'm working on called the Goldilocks theory. And it's this thing where automatically whatever they want, they take. And it doesn't matter how it affects anybody else. They decided that they wanted to be out of it because they were getting ready to be outed. This was not a decision that they came to all of a sudden. They knew that the story would get out. So they decided, I'm upset with it. I don't think that, I think that things should be taken from them. Whatever they gained under the guise of Blackness should be removed from them, whether that be degrees, book deals, salaries, grants, whatever, it should be taken away.
Right, because on the other end of that is a Black woman who did not receive any of those scholarships, funding, jobs. I mean, when the playing field is slim as it is, my thought is how to me is how sick you must be.
It's a pathology, it definitely is.
To not only pose as a Black woman, but to pose as a Black woman and work in topics that directly affect Black people.
Well, but if you go to Alice's point, they believe that they have the right to do so, right? While she's developing this theory, they feel that they have the right. That is what white supremacy is. White supremacy means I am supreme, and so whatever I decide to do, it is okay because I've decided to do it, right? And I think and I'm not discounting anything that you're saying. I do believe it's sick. I do believe it's a sickness, but we have to recognize the sickness for what it is. It's white supremacy. Right? If I decide I want to wear my afro today and be blackety black when I'm really a white woman, then that's what I've decided, right? And so for me, I was immediately infuriated. Yeah. And I was immediately infuriated because I am a younger Black scholar who has been clawing at the heels of the academy trying to get in. I graduated my PhD did not come during the recession, but I graduated from undergrad during the recession. And so it really turned the academic field upside down. Everything was up in the air as far as what does it mean to be in academia? What does tenure mean? What do all of these things mean? Were really turned up in the air after 2008. And so by the time we get to 15, I mean, things are in shambles. We are seeing more and more professors who are being asked to adjunct. and they are usually scholars of color or scholars that are living at the margins. They are the ones that are teaching these very specialized classes because students have come in with an uproar and demanded some level of diversity in teaching, whether that be from a gender perspective, a race perspective, from a sexuality perspective, no matter where it is. And because of the type of research that Black women do, it's usually us that are getting adjunct. So for me, it was immediately infuriating because I've been fighting now for 4 years to get on a tenure track, to get a tenure track job. And two of these women were in positions holding up tenure track jobs and benefited because of this colonial thought process or this white supremacist thought process that says that I want Blackness, but I want Blackness to perform the way that I would like it to perform. I want it to look the way that I want it to look, and I wanted to fulfill certain stereotypes. And these women did all of those things to advance. And like I was saying before, I really believe that they were strategic about the places that they went because there was no body that was politically Black enough to then justify if they were really Black. And what I mean by politically Black is I have a piece coming out with a co-author where I have a theory called insulated Blackness. And that basically means that if you have not had enough Black discrimination experiences, it's going to be very difficult for you then to champion pro-remedial Black policy because you haven't had these discrimination experiences. And my point is that there were not enough people in these spaces that had had enough discrimination, Black discrimination or Black racial discrimination as experiences that could then check either one of these women on this performative action of calling themselves Black.
Well, I think this also leads to the question of is that how can a white woman pose as Black at an institution and not be discovered, right? And not be outed. So in your thinking and what you were saying is that not only are these people at the universities do not have the capacity to understand what it means in terms of these experience or these lived incidents of being Black, but she also represents a non-threatening Black person as well. Let's be totally honest, right? And so at these universities, in my opinion, is that the Black person that can meet the quota, but do it in a way that does not disrupt the white establishment is the ideal Black person. And a Black woman, all of us here on the panel with natural hair, with phenotypically how we look, how we talk, and how we position ourselves would not be considered desirable.
Yes, true. And especially if you call yourself an Africologist, that's just Black, and that's too Black for a lot of institutions. I can't not be who I am, though. I'm Black, right? Sherice, Blackity Black, right?
Blackity Black.
And sometimes, because what it does is it forces these institutions to actually confront their biases, to confront their racial and racist practices. Also, these women fed into stereotypical Blackness. So it was performative. It was the hair, it was the language, it was the clothing. It definitely wasn't the soul, though. And the fact that they're teaching these students, and as the stories come out, I'm following the stories because I was wondering what happened to these students. This semester, I have 180 students, and they're looking at me as a Black woman. So these things that I'm teaching them and these perspectives that I'm teaching them, they're thinking are Black perspective. Well, they are in my case because I am an Africologist. But these women were so negative with some of these students. And so even their approach to teaching Black students is suspect.
But I think that's the point, right? I think you're exactly right, Alice. That was the point, and that is the point of the larger white colonial type space. And I call it colonial, right? Because what we have to remember is that the United States of America was a colony of Britain. Okay, and we split ourselves into 13 different little states, but we were the colonies, right? We're from the same colonial history, and I use that word very intentionally because oftentimes we think when we're looking at the diaspora that what happened to us was just so much more different than what happened on the continent, and it's not. It may take on a different face, it may feel different, it may have caused different things, there may be different outputs, but it was the same thing. And what I mean by it being the same thing, it's the same psychology. It's
Yeah.
the same motives behind it. And that is why I think that this piece is intentional, right? It's intentional to then get someone that can then represent quote unquote blackness, yet still is going to then indoctrinate a set of students to believe a particular way, right? And they know this, right? They know this when you show up, right? They know this when you show up. And I gave the example of me teaching at Santa Clara University, right? I taught at Santa Clara University as an adjunct. I was the only Black woman who had taught in the department ever. Right. And so there was already the perception that I was going to teach things from a Black perspective. And when one of my students said that to me, I said, you're absolutely right. You're damn right. I'm going to teach it from a Black perspective, because I cannot deny who I am. And I cannot deny how theory has in fact practiced, has been practiced over my life and in my life. And if we are being clear about the issue, for my case, where I teach political science, if we're talking about the issue of politics, we're talking about the issues of power. And when we're talking about the issues of power, white males have had the power to then define what then society means. And that has then made my life living at any and every intersection a problem.
Yeah.
But I think in my opinion, this incident, I think we often blame white men or white males as the biggest problem. But if we're thinking about colonial powers and we're thinking about plantations and we're thinking about slavery, they had to marry somebody.
Right.
So, and as you know, a lot of these histories are coming out. There were a lot of white female slave owners. So
Right.
I think it is dangerous if we continue to not actually challenge white women. And I think this is one of the reasons why, in my opinion, how a white woman could pose as Black and not be outed is because white women don't have the same level of scrutiny as white males. And so they can maneuver through these issues of race with a little bit more fluidity than a white male. But the question that I have is that, what does this say about this whole thing about race being a social construction? What would be your response about that? And like, what does it mean to be Black? If these people can jump in and out of that. I got a whole little answer, but I really like to hear what you have to say.
It's a social construction, but there are some very real things attached to it. One of the conversations that I was having with a colleague just recently was the fact that, oh, well, Black people pass. There is a really big difference in Black people passing and what's going on here, because by Black people passing, when they had to, and it was very big, you know, in the 30s and 40s, it was mostly to protect themselves or to make a living. But this idea of white people passing for Black is this Goldilocks mentality, this, I want this, so I'm gonna take it. Even though I could go elsewhere and get it, I'm gonna take this from you. It is purposeful. And it is insulting.
Yeah, and for me, the holding white women accountable, I hold them accountable, but I hold them accountable against their white men, right? Because, and the reason I say I hold them accountable against their white men is because as we as women know, and we as I would guess as heterosexual women know the power of a woman over a man. There is a power, a gift that we have been given, no matter how you see the cosmos created, right? That there is a spirituality in a woman that has been given that then has a level of authority over men. And so when we talk or shift the conversation of responsibility to white women, that responsibility for me is for them not dealing with their men. And the reason that they haven't dealt with their men is because they have found a way to play victim to then move between spaces, right? That's one of the biggest reasons that they don't deal with their men. But we as Black women know, and women I would say of even other ethnic backgrounds, know that we can move our men the way that we want them to move, right? Your grandmama taught you that. I mean, especially growing up in California, watching Asian culture, I would watch the women a lot of times move the men and let men think that they were in charge of something and move them to get what they wanted. And so when I talk about the white men, I'm talking about the structure that they've created and the fact that white women haven't beat back that structure. They've played victim in that structure so that they can move fluid throughout those pieces. And so or the piece of the piece of ownership in every place, right? They are, in my opinion, stretching their ownership across spaces because of the fact that they have now called themselves the chief victim. And so one of the reasons that, I feel like it can happen or that it can go back and forth is because they were inside of spaces that did not have enough enough politically Black people to call them out. Right? They were in institutions where there wasn't enough of sister girls like us that would have been like, wait a minute, something's off, right? And I think that, again, GW has a history of this. They have not, I think there's only 3 Black women who have been tenured at the college ever. And I may be wrong about those stats, but I think it's like 3 of them. And so if you are going to institutions or being crafty about where to go to make sure that you're not outed, to me, this is the strategy of victimhood that then stretches over space and time.
Okay, so, but I also must say this. I think that white women historically use this victimhood, but also they play a significant role because they profit tremendously off of it. I think this is also, in my opinion, a residual of the failure of affirmative action, of white women being the major benefactors of affirmative action. So not are they they are benefactors of white, supremacy and and white privilege, but they're also benefactors of the the legislature or the workplace laws. Well, they're not really that much anymore, that are for quote unquote minorities. And I think that I know that Jessica Krug is not she's not an anomaly. I know that there are more out there, or at the very least, white women, and I've had this in my university experiences as a student and as well as a professor, where you have these white women who say that they're white, but they're in these very Black spaces or in these positions where they're articulating and they're researching Blackness and Black people, and they are the authority, right? And so this leads, but this also, I think this rolls into the question of if people are listening, I think people want to know is that as a Black woman, what was your experience in going through the hiring process? And in you thinking about your hiring process, how are you thinking about these issues of white women posing as Black women in the academy?
Yeah, so I think this is the biggest thing. I think one of the biggest things is that all 3 of us, right, we've had discussions about our scholarship. Our scholarship does not fit neatly into the subfields that they've created. And so one of the issues is how we research, right? It's not just what we research, it's how we research, right? The way that I research, what I'm interested in, leadership is from psychology. Behavior, the leading field in how we behave is either psychology or economics, right? And so what I enjoy to study, or what I'm here to study, or what I feel like I've been put on this earth to then bring to light, is something that doesn't fit neatly inside of the academy. So for instance, one of the things that I would face oftentimes on the job market, when I was on the job market, would be, well, how can you teach so many of these different classes? How can you teach African politics and you could teach Black politics? How can you teach international political economy and you could teach constitutional law? That isn't, these are the subfields and where they are. And I would have to go through this explanation several times as to why I'm able to do what I'm able to do, especially at the undergrad level. And so for me, what rang out clearly was they positioned themselves as race scholars, right? And by positioning themselves as race scholars, they fit into this Eurocentric understanding of how research is supposed to be done, how siloed it's supposed to be. And so it was easier to digest. I would argue that all three of us, it would be more difficult to digest us because of the intersections of how we do research. And so it's hard to then place us in a category. And the reason that that category is there, to just be frank and honest, is so that they can say, well, your scholarship goes in these types of journals. Your scholarship goes in these types of journals. It could be put in journals that I don't have to look at or I don't have to read. And so that's another thing, right? Knowledge production is a lot of about what this is. And so when I saw it, it was, this makes perfect sense as to why sisters like ourselves have a difficult time fitting inside of the academy, because we don't fit into the silos that they've created.
True.
Alice, I would like to hear your thoughts.
Absolutely true. And my experiences were, because I'm very honest. So I want these universities to know who I am. I'm kind of grateful to be back at my alma mater though right now. But the fact that we already have one became this standard response. You know, we already have an Africanist. We already have an Africologist. When in actuality, what they had was another Black woman who, you know, in the case of one of the universities, was a Marxist. Even though she put Black in front of it, she was still a Marxist. And a Marxist and an Africologist are two separate things. But because we were both Black women, they already had their Black woman. You know, so it was disheartening. And then with all of this other information coming out, it is frustrating. My area of study is very specialized. You know, my degree is not well known, but there are Africologists and we do study, you know, we do our research. Our perspective is different though. So it's not just education for education's sake or to give you these dates and these names, but it's education for liberation. And so if you're honest with these universities and you tell them the aim of my education is Black liberation, then of course they're going to step back and say, well, no, we need somebody that's a little bit softer, somebody that can follow, you know, what we think Blackness should be, and why speak of liberation.
And, you know, I want to say this, Sherice, I actually enrolled in a PhD program at the age of 31. Which was 2007. I went and got my master's in 2004 at the age of 30, you know, so, or 29, 29. And I'm getting all these numbers wrong. But anyway, long story short, so 2007 is when I finished my master's. So this is around the time that I'm finishing. Is the same time, you know, we're all in this together. And Alice actually just recently got her PhD. I got my PhD in 2015. So what is it like, me as a 40-year-old woman navigating the space? I was in a lot of ways considered too old and kind of like too tainted, because I'm a Black woman with lived experiences. And as you know, let's be honest, the PhD process, regardless of what institution you went to, is grueling. And a lot of people just don't make it out. That is what it is. And even though you went to an HBCU, I went to two, even though you went to HBCU, that does not mean that the institution is Black, especially the higher you get in your studies. Like in the doctoral program, everybody is not Black, especially the professors, right? So, and then on top of that, a lot of people assume because it's a historically Black college that it's centered in Blackness. All of the HBCUs were not centered in what we might consider Blackness today, right? So so there's a lot of gatekeepers, not only just at HBCUs, but Black gatekeepers in general in the academic space. So here I am, a 40-year-old woman, you know, with natural hair, I had locks, you know, trying to navigate this space and in the hiring process. It took me actually 3 years to find a job that is not tenured. All right. And so when I thought about this specific process, is this idea of walking into, and you guys know this very well, when you are coming into an interview and you physically walk into the space and the assessment that happens, right? And also the non-communicative, language that is said, particularly by white women, as you totally, you see them as you're being read as aggressive. You haven't even said anything, you're automatically being read as aggressive, right? So the hiring process and all of the hoops and the things that you've got to go to in order to be that. But the base is that, anybody that is looking for a job, you can't present your kind of full self. But there is just a lot of work as a Black woman that you have got to do, where you have got to be in a way that doesn't literally scare folk. You know what I'm saying?
Let me tell you a story about this.
Let me just say this. Hold on, Sharice. Let me just say this really, really, really quickly. And a lot of people don't know this. Black women have the highest mortality rate. They die the fastest in the academy because the amount of stress. I know Black women academics who are on blood pressure pills, fibroids, going to see counselors. This place literally is driving women into the grave. So I want to emphasize that. So it's not an easy space to get into. And then when you get into it, you're dealing with all of these levels of stress that manifest in your physical issues. So I apologize, sister. I need to say.
No. I think that's extremely important, and it makes my story, I think, even more touching, because I did not know that. I did not know that we die at a higher rate. So long story short, when I finished my PhD in 15, I was in DC and I was gonna work nonprofit. I did that for a year. I was like, oh, I don't like this. And God called me to teach. And I'll never forget it, because my sister was getting married and they asked me to come in and teach African politics at St. Mary's after an uprising, because students were upset because they weren't being taught, ethnically diverse inside of the politics department there. And I went in for the interview. This is when you talked about the physicality of it. I remember being so very nervous about it. And I was very nervous about it because my sister was getting married that week and I was flying to Las Vegas. So my hair wasn't done, right? Meaning that it wasn't straightened. I didn't have a suit, right? Because I was in California really to pick my grandmother up so I could fly with her down to Las Vegas for my sister's wedding. My nails weren't done. The only thing that I could, my eyebrows wasn't waxed good. So all of it was causing a certain level of anxiety in me. And the reason I want to tell the story is that I'll never forget walking up the stairs. I was late because I had gotten lost up there. And so I was just a lot of anxiety, right? And I'm like, this is it. I got to get this job, or I don't know what I'm going to do next. And so I remember walking up the stairs and I remember hearing a cane. And when the professor came around the corner, he heard me stop in the middle of my tracks. And I said, oh, Dr. Hasham, nice to meet you. I did not know that you were visually impaired. And he laughed and he said, you don't have to be politically correct. I'm blind. And I said, wow, he said, I can hear in your voice that you're shocked. I said, yeah, because I was really worried about the fact of my dress and how I'm presenting today. Because of, the fact that I told you that I'm preparing for a family celebration and a wedding. And he stopped and he said, yeah, but now I can really see you. And that made me so emotional, right? That I didn't have to worry about what I physically looked like and if it was going to stop me from getting the job, right? A level of anxiety I was walking into the job interview with was instantly gone by the fact that he could not physically see me. And I knew that was God, right? And I knew that was God letting me know that what I have is enough, because the academy will make you feel that who you are and what you have is not enough. And so, yes, HBCUs are not necessarily all centered in Blackness. I'm blessed to be where I am, where I have a chair that don't play that, right? Y'all can do what y'all want to do in y'all departments, but as the Bible would say, me in my house, we gonna do this. And so in my department, I don't have to worry about that. But that level of emotion that came out of me in that hallway, in those steps, right? I mean, what you talk about just made me go back to that day and made me go back to the emotion that I felt that my scholarship was the only thing on the table.
And that's, for me, I had to get to a point that I had to be okay and who I was, however I looked, whatever people felt about me. I knew that I brought a knowledge, I brought a body of scholarship that nobody in the world had. But to get there, and everybody doesn't get there, you know what I'm saying? But to get there, when you were talking, I just began to live all of these different things and all of the experiences that a Black female professor has to take.
What up, Art Republicans? I hope you are enjoying the inaugural episode of The Remedy. If you want to see more of The Remedy, it comes on every week on Wednesday. Just go to our YouTube page, which is named after us, Art Republic, or check our website, artrepublic.com.
For a while, constantly self-correcting myself, right? Constantly thinking about, should I say this? Should I say that? Until one day I just broke. I can't do this anymore. I can only be who I am. And so I'm so glad that you had that experience, because we as Black women have such a different kind of understanding of how we approach our scholarship and the impact and the affect we do. This is why, for me, this issue, like you said, it infuriates me that she took the place of somebody that is well deserving of me. And let me just say this, and I'm going to end. Another thing that, as a Black female scholar, I'm African American. I'm a Black American. I am a person of African descent. Born and reared in the United States. So there's even this thing of being a professor on the Northeast in the New York area of, I am not Caribbean and I'm not African. That's a whole other negotiation. And I never encountered that. I'm from California, like y'all. So this is another kind of interesting dynamic. And let me just drop this statistic as well. About half now of PhDs and professors who say that they're Black are mixed race or biracial. That's even, and that's something I want to move into in terms of like understanding how this person can be white, you know what I'm saying, but still be considered Black. That was very long-winded, but girl, you made tears come out my eyes. I'm glad I got my glasses on. Yeah, I'm glad I have my glasses on because I feel you and I see you and I know you and I've been there. And a lot of people didn't make it. A lot of, I went to Clark Atlanta University for my master's degree. It was the most fulfilling experience to be in a room of all Black people and us talking about theory and like going into these different layers of intellectual exploration, and then jump back and be like, you going to the strip club tonight? It was, that is just the nuance that we bring. So, thank you so much for allowing, us to hear that story. We needed it. I want to know, we talked about what it was like. I talked about my experience in the academy, but I'm very interested in this particular moment. What is it? What is the, what's the energy? What's the experiences of working in the university system at this particular moment? And how can people support us? What ways can people support us?
Alice, please go. Please go first.
Number one, 75% of those that are teaching in the academy are teaching as adjuncts. That is definitely unacceptable. So we need to, and we definitely have the numbers, right? I'm teaching 4 classes this semester. All of my classes are enrolled at capacity. Each one of them. Mm-hmm. But with this pandemic, everything's going to be online all the way through spring. The chancellor has decided that he would keep the campuses closed, but they're also considering cutting classes and expanding our cap, which doesn't make any, I'm not going for it, so I don't know what's going to happen. But as it is now, I don't think we get the support that we need. We're definitely not seeing, And then I made the conscious decision to not just study in Black studies, right, to get my degrees in Africology, but to teach in Black studies, which has been under attack since the 60s when it was implemented. So I feel like we are always under attack. We're the first to be cut. And our scholarship is not always taken seriously. Although it's, in my opinion, any ethnic studies department is one of the most important departments in a university anyway, because it counters the regular narrative. It gives us the true story, the true history, the true politics from the perspectives of the people that we're talking about. So these race scholars are oftentimes, and the griot was saying that, I love reading the griot, but they're also saying these are race fakers. And so just like when we say white supremacists, we have to make sure that we put that assumed supremacy. It's an assumed position. It's a dangerous pathology and an assumed position. These aren't race scholars, these are race fakers. So one thing we need to do is to change the language, to make the language honest. We need to pay our professors better. Of course, I'm always going to say that, but we definitely do. We have, Angela Davis talked about that, especially as Black women. We have both feet and both struggles. We're always doing double duty, and we should be paid for that. The universities want us on these councils and in these committees. For what? To tell them the same things we've been telling them, you know, for the last 50, 55 years. I'm tired. I'm tired. So we definitely need the support that other departments like philosophy, you know, largely white, like 99% white. We need the resources that business administration would have, that the English department would have, that arts department would have. But instead, we're the first to be cut. But we know
Alice, the reason and this is the reason that they always provide, right? There's not enough majors in your field, blah 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 blah. But I push back against that all the time, and I said, yes, there's no one that's signing up in a white Eurocentric space to then to get blackity black. No one's signing up for that except for kids that are already in that space that are Black. And the way that you increase majors in the field is by then giving these scholars in Black studies a dual appointmentship. Because what we often find is that people in Black studies are specializing in a particular area, right? You're an Africologist, right? That means you should then also have a dual appointment in psychology, and they should have to be taking a certain number of classes from you to get through to get that psychology degree, right? We could solve this structurally so that this wouldn't be a problem that every time it's time to cut, right? To me, that's another strategy. You give us our own department, then no one's going to just decide that they're going to just sign up for this major, right? You know this, right? And so instead of cross-listing us, at least cross-listing the classes at the very minimum, but really giving us dual appointmentship so that we can go inside of these spaces and be the disruptors that we're supposed to be. You don't do that so that you have a justification to cut us when it's time to cut.
Agreed.
I think also along with that, I have a couple of things that I want to add. So within the academic space, dismantle the ranking system of evaluations, okay? Fuck evaluations. I'm just gonna put it right there. Historically, women, in particular Black women, always get the lowest and worst evaluations across the board. Evaluations just mean a whole bunch of begruntled ass students that are uncomfortable with being critiqued and intellectually challenged by Black women. Okay, I'm not saying all Black professors are great or anything like that, but the evaluation process does not work at all. Okay, another thing is that you either need to dismantle diversity and inclusion offices or give them real power.
Yes.
Because if you're not going to give them real power, all they are doing is occupying a space. And what is that?
A lot of money.
And exactly. Mm-hmm. And what that means by giving them real power is that they need to be in in the meetings to make real decisions about how to implement policies, how to implement staff and programs that not only brings about diversity, but keeps conversations going about it, as well as, in my opinion, also creates this community that reflects these new generation of students that are coming, right?
Well, but they're not at the table when it's time to hire, though, right?
That was the next thing. Yep.
The biggest thing is they're not at the table when it's time to hire, and we've hidden behind academic, we've hidden behind our degrees as to why they can't be in the room. I don't understand why a diversity and inclusion person cannot be in the room when you guys are making decisions about tenure. If there is a clear-cut process on how this works, right? See, where I am at Southern, it's a lot more, I think, transparent. And what I mean by transparent, there's a number system. So in research, you got to get, there's a maximum of 18 points that you can get. You have to get 15 to move on. A single journal article is worth this number of points. If it's co-authored, it's worth this number of points, right? So it's a pretty transparent situation. And I know that's not the case at other institutions. But my thing is, why are they not in? The point of having them there is so that they're in the room when tenure is being discussed, when hiring and staff is being discussed, when the student handbook is being discussed. Why are they not in those meetings? Why are they just putting on programs is what I guess is my thing. So to your point about policy, yeah, but they got to be at the table when it's time to hire.
Right. And really have a effective assessment on how it's being carried out and what to do with it when it's not, right? That's also a part. And to add to your point, that's excellent. I think that any leadership across the board at university and college systems needs to reflect the populations in which it exists. Currently, leadership, we're talking about deans of colleges, chairpersons, presidents of colleges, provosts, and so on, are largely white men, right? So one, that needs to be totally changed and shifted. And as well, I think that in that change, you need to force out these 30, these professors who only teach one class, have been there for 30 or 40 years, make six-figure salaries, and this is also administration. They need to chop down the budgets of those in administration as well, and force them out and force them to retire in order to make space for other people who represent the growing numbers of the students. So that goes along with what you were talking about. So these diversity, equity, inclusion people need to be in these hiring practices and carry them out and hold folk accountable.
Yes, agreed. And then because they're doing a buyout on my campus, one of the things that I like about my campus is that the president is a Black man. You know, Dr. Parham is Black, and the chair of my department is a Black woman. But the power is not there.
No.
Right? He has to follow what the chancellor, California College says. She has to follow what administration says. And this buyout that they're having right now for those professors who have been there 30 plus years, if you want to retire, you can go ahead. They're not replacing them with tenure track positions. They're replacing them with adjunct part-time positions.
And I just think, I'm sorry, Sharice, go ahead.
Yeah, and to go even further about Dr. Parham, right? Dr. Parham, from what I understand, right, his budget is the smallest inside of the CSU system on top of it, right? He's serving the most diverse set of students in the out of the entire 23 colleges, yet they are being treated like the bald-headed stepchild of the entire system, right? So it's not. So it's also about resources, right? When we're talking about when we're talking about these shifts, it's also about resources. Put your money where your mouth is. And the reason that, and I'm in a different position because I'm at an HBCU, but when I watch the chancellor, see, Southern is the only HBCU that's in a system. And what I mean by that is they have several campuses. So they perform just like the CSU system, right? They don't have 23 campuses. They just have 5, right? We have the law school. We have the New Orleans campus. We have the Shreveport campus, the Baton Rouge campus, the law center, and then we have the farm, right? We have the agriculture and mechanical. And so what I watch on these meetings is that the state is giving us less and less and less and less funding, right? They are structurally trying to make it so that they can come and do a takeover, right? And so, and it's glaringly obvious, right? And so that is why on my campus, I encourage people all the time to say, listen, we know what they're trying to do to us on the outside. So since all of us on the inside, we already know who the interlopers are. We already know who's here that's not for our best interest. Then we have to learn how to, you know, in some ways work like we did on the plantation and give some hand signals or do whatever we need to do, because we know what they're doing on the outside. And every time we get any level of success, they find a way to cut funding. And with the recent situation down at Southern was very proactive in getting involved in cannabis, and they're the only HBCU that is, you know, growing marijuana for medical testing, generating revenue to the institution, right, to the entire system. What did they do? They went and cut our money. So when we know these things are happening and we know that the money's going to be cut, then what strategic partnership are we already engaged in to replace the money that we know that they're going to cut from us, right? And so to me, resources is the other driver, right? Is the huge driver behind this piece, because like Alice said, the students are there, right? My only class that's not over enrolled is my American Foreign Policy class, and that's an upper divisional, and there's supposed to be 30 in it, and there's 22 in it. So that's the only class of mine that's not over enrolled. All my other classes, all of the other 3 classes that I'm teaching are over enrolled right now.
So we're going into week 4. Students are still trying to add.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm full to capacity. Usually when students come the first or second week, you know, they exit the vehicle real quick. But I'm teaching a whole different demographic. But I want to talk to what Sherice, you know, was saying specifically about Southern University. You know, my parents, well, my mother and one of my sisters is a graduate of Southern University, and my father was actually in the 1972 protest of Southern University and was subsequently arrested, blacklisted, and did not graduate 4 months before he was to graduate. So part, I think, of the problem of just not, let's just say an HBCU, but Blacks in leadership in the academy, in my opinion, I'm not in the leadership position. You either are working toward progress and freedom or you're not. And I think that, you know, those in leadership, if they want to see Black kids and just even a continued diversity in the schools, but particularly Black kids, because, you know, our numbers are not necessarily growing like that, but is that there has to be radical change and there must be a radical stance. They cannot continue to be gatekeepers anymore. And there needs to be space for creative, brilliant minds like Alice's, like yours, Sherice, that tackle these problems when this Black respectability politics don't work. It does not work in any space, right? And be prepared and ready to, okay, I'm going to take this stance. And if I do take this stance, I know that there's a probability or a possibility that I might not have this position, but I have mentored, that's the problem. I have mentored somebody or enough people to pick up the mantle where I left off. And if I am out of a job and money is an issue, those who I left behind can make sure that I'm okay. We don't have that in place, right? No. That needs to be in place, because as much as we have, you know, Dr. Shivers, and people are like, ooh, you a doctor, you know, I'm almost $200,000 in student loan debt, right? And so that is something that was implemented when they saw more women, more Black people, more brown people going into colleges, were to create these obstacles where you're not enjoying the spoils of your, you know, the work that you did. Yeah. I also want to say this. Those of you who are white or are non-Black and are listening, if you are really about this, one, you need to start going to these diversity, equity, inclusion meetings. It cannot be, I'm in a diversity meeting and 85% of the people there are non-white. That is absolutely asinine. It puts more work on us. Like, why am I in the diversity, doing the diversity work when I just barely got up in the door? So now I have to do my work, my teaching, my scholarship, my responsibilities in my department, and I got to go to this diversity, equity, inclusion, and do all of these programs. That is not how it is supposed to be. And this is one of the reasons why these white women could do this, is because the white people in these universities who say that they're, they're knowledgeable and they're blah, 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 are not doing the work. If you are about that doing the work, there is somebody that I know right now who almost makes $300,000 at a university and is encouraging people every day to strike. He's encouraging professors, adjunct professors, who are making $40,000, $30,000 a year with $100,000 and $200,000 loan to strike. Where is the sense in that? There must be a retooling of that. So, so those are the things that, that I add in terms of like really thinking about solution and resolution.
One last thing I do want to say on this piece is that, so I have a consultancy, and I started the consultancy in 2016, and I started it basically because I was in the nonprofit world, and every time an issue of race came up, they were asking me to fix it. And I was like, oh, nah, I got to get paid to do this level of work. I got to get paid. And over time, right, I'll just be honest with you. I wasn't always forceful. So what I used it as was, oh, my son needs this. Let me go get me a client real quick because I need to make this money. Because it was easy, right? It's work that's a part of my soul, so it was easy to do. And I didn't really build it like I should have, right? Because I was chasing the academic piece. But now that I'm squarely away in this tenure track position, and I know that I am in a great position to make tenure based upon the rules at Southern. And I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but I'm in a great position to do so. I have really gotten the consultancy back up and running, and I've been putting a lot of work back into it. And one of the things that I feel that makes me different than a lot of the other consultants is that I really work with I work with organizational leaders at the top of the food chain. So CEOs or people in the C-suite. I work with executive directors and their VPs. And what I really help them do is to unravel this unconscious bias that they have, because it's so baked into the cake. Many of them have just think that they're objective measures when they're really racially motivated. And so the reason that I'm pointing this out is because there is an acronym that I've come up with to help these pro-white folk. I mean, these white folks who are so pro-black. I said, you want to help? This is what you need to do. Here's an acronym for it, and it's called HVAC. Right? Because I truly believe that just like HVAC heats your home and cools your home, it's really the heart of your home as far as keeping you warm or keeping you cool. HVAC needs to be at the center of how you do things in your organization. And HVAC stands for hear, believe, admit, confess, and commit. And what this just basically means is this: hear Black folks when they tell you the issues. Hear them through art. Hear them through literature. Hear them through political protests. Hear them through lived experiences. Hear them, and after you hear them, believe them. The next one, believe what they're telling you. And believe that it's a generational story that's happened generation throughout generation. And just because it's not from your generational experience doesn't mean that you should not believe it. The fact that you're pushing back on believing it is your white supremacist mythology at work, which is why you don't want to believe what you are hearing. And after you then hear and believe it, then you have to admit that you've been living a life of racial privilege. That you have to admit that you have benefited in many ways from the racial hierarchy that is created. And this is where I really get them, because it is not admitting that you own slaves, right? This whole idea that, well, I don't want to pay for what my ancestors did. It's not about paying for it. It's about the fact that you have benefited from a racial hierarchy, and you need to admit that.
One that still exists.
One that still exists, that you are wielding every day in these organizations, and that you want me then to duplicate in every space that I show up in, and I'm refusing to do. And then the next thing you have to do is confess. You have to confess that you've heard these things, that you now believe what's going on, and that you admitted to yourself that you've lived this privilege. Now you need to confess this to other people who have lived with the same racial privilege. This is not just about, this is about racial privilege. Where are you on the color line, and what have you then benefited from being there? And that includes a white presenting Latina woman. That includes a white presenting Latina male, right? This is about the racial privilege that you have then benefited from. So who are you confessing to after admitting that you've done this? And then the C is commit. So commit to living a lifestyle that says that I do not believe a racial hierarchy exists. No racial hierarchy should exist. Not the fact that I denounce it, it shouldn't exist. And that's what you should be committed to. You should be committed to dismantling a society that has allowed the profiting of some people or certain groups of people because of a racial hierarchy. So I thought that I put that out there because I use that and I get organizational leaders to work through that. Oftentimes it takes a lot of work with the hearing part, right? I spend a lot of time at the hear, but once I can get them to hear and then believe, the rest are a lot easier to get them to do once those two pillars come coming down. So I thought I'd present that here.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Alice, do you have any projects outside of the university that you're working on, or are you consulting where people can, contact you if possible?
Both. So yes, the consulting, and I am willing to work with organizations outside of the academy because it's all about liberation for me. So my life's work is in the academy, but my work can be, spread throughout the academy. And of course, I'm an academic, but I'm also an artist. So I had a book that came out a few weeks ago. It's part of the 10 Million Stories series that I started in 1999. This is volume 9. So I'm continuing the work, but yes, I agree. If I'm doing the work in the academy for free, then I should be paid for the work outside of the academy. I had to step back from a committee that I was on. A lot of times I have to ask the question, why? Because I wonder sometimes with some of the treatment or some of the microaggressions, and I have to bite my tongue because I'm new, right? I just got my PhD in 2019. So it's been a year. The thing is, I still want to question why. Why are you asking this? Because I'm Black? Why are you treating me like this? Because I'm a Black woman? It's just, but so, in answer to your question, yes, I do have projects outside of the academy because I do believe that a lot of the work that's happening in the academy needs to be taken outside of the academy. People are bringing their same biases into the classroom. They're bringing those biases into the boardrooms, right? Into these tenure track committee meetings. I mean, it's everywhere. So the work needs to be done both inside and outside of the academy. But as Black women who do have both feet in both struggles, we deserve to be paid for that too.
Alice, so this is what I do. Every time that one of those questions come up and I think to myself, would you have asked a white person that? I just call them out on it. So the latest one is, well, I'm younger, right? I got my PhD at 27 years old, making departmental history at Howard, had a baby in the process, right? And so I'm younger, right? And so when I was at Santa Clara, a professor came up to me and was like, oh, are you a graduate student? And I was like, no, I'm not a graduate student. And he was like, well, you just look so young. And I said, you know what? I want to take that as a compliment. I said, but a part of me doesn't know whether to take it as a compliment or not. And he was like, well, why? Why would you, not take it as a compliment? I mean, I would love to look like you. And I said, that's exactly why I don't think it's a compliment. I said, because you want to be me, but you don't want any of the struggle that comes with what it means to be me. I said, I have said departmental history at where I am at Howard University. I'm the first Black woman to ever teach in the politics department. And the first thing that came to your mind when you saw me was that I was a graduate student, because there's no way that I could actually be a professor. I said, that's what comes to me. Now, I'm not saying that was your intention, because I can't speak for your intentionality, but I need you to understand from my shoes why I have to question even a compliment that you feel like you're providing. And so I just call them out, and I call them out in not a very aggressive way. Well, they're gonna think I'm aggressive anyway. It don't make a difference. But I call them out on it to just get them to think about their own thinking, not to be a right or a wrong, right? And I walked away, and he was like, you know what? I really appreciate, you didn't make me feel bad. You didn't whatever else. And I was like, that wasn't my intention. My intention was to get you to think about things that you think are automatically okay. Never cross your mind that it could be offensive or that it's something that makes me question, right? The same thing I did to another scholar when I was at Puerto Rico in June. or in January, at the beginning of the year, they had a conference. I was down there in Puerto Rico, and one of the professors was like, "Oh yeah, we're going to go to the pool. Sherice, do you want to go?" I said I would never be at the conference hotel and come down in my swimsuit. As a Black woman with my physiology, what I present physically may then be a problem for me professionally when I'm no longer at this conference. So I don't have the luxury of coming down.
House.
I don't have the luxury of coming down in the lobby with my swimsuit on and it not being,
because you will stop traffic.
Right, and it not then causing a question about my professionality. Whereas for you, it's something that you don't have to think about, right? So I just call them out. I don't mean I call them out like you're wrong and this is racist and da da da. No, I just call them out to say, hey, you may not have thought about it this way, but this is something that you need to take into consideration. So I just encourage you to do that. It doesn't matter how new you are, because what I truly believe is, whatever God has for you, he has for you. So if you're being in these positions to get them to think, use your Africology, use what you know to be at the heart of what you do to call them out. It's just that simple.
So I think it's a great segue into the last question. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, Beyonce ain't got shit on this. Beyonce ain't got nothing on this. Okay, so another thing you see, I met Alice actually on the poetry scene in Los Angeles. Alice is a bad poet. If she ever climbs out of her professor shell and performs, you must see it. It is an experience. I think that's another thing we offer. I think as a Black person, you've got to occupy all these kind of different identities and spaces in order to kind of make sense of stuff. You often fall, people are artists and activists and so on and so forth. And I think that's what's fly. Posing this last question is that let's talk about the immediate and long-term ways that we can specifically champion Black women in academics, specifically. Two I want to offer, and then I'm going to let you two have the last say in this. One is that there should be a specific percentage of grants and research funds earmarked for Black women specifically. As well, the whole academy, you need to get comfortable with Black women, because we are coming out with our beautiful head wraps. We all got great, beautiful head wraps today, and our natural hairs, and our beaked face, and our big earrings, and our, ethnic, Afrocentric, fly, vibrant attire, okay, with our banging suits and things like that. So you need to get comfortable with this Black woman swagger, because it's only gonna come stronger. Right. And understand. And so this is another thing, like in the beginning, Sherice, when we were talking and you were like, I disagree because in the head, I was like, I'm rooting for you, sister. That's right. That's right. I love that. I embrace that. I honor that. I lift that up. A lot of people scared of that. You know what I mean? Give Black women the space to be who they are. You will get so much more out of it. And so that's what I have to say. In terms of the long-term ways we could champion Black women.
Yeah, my biggest thing is give us our range of emotions back. I think so for me, I'm at HBCU, so funding is huge, right? I think earmarking and grants, but I'm already thinking about like where am I going to go outside to get this grant money? So I think grants are definitely necessary. I think grants are different at HBCUs than they are at other places, and so it's not grants from the institution, right? It's going to be grants from the outside, and then having a place to go and do that. But for me, the biggest way I think in my institutional space is give Black women their full emotions back. If I need a moment to cry, don't think I'm weak because I need to cry. If there's a moment that I need to be mad, then let me be mad. Give me a moment to be a mother. If I need to go, run and do something for my child, then give me that moment and let me as a mother deal with the anxieties or what surrounds me being a mother in the academy. Because I'm currently in a legal battle with my son's father over my son. And so I'm going to mediation between going to class. So I'm on a Zoom call for mediation. And then I got to Zoom in to teach a certain set of kids because we're in a hybrid. So I got certain kids that are in my face and certain kids that are on the Zoom. And that's a lot. It's just a lot. And so for me, what I feel like is every time a Black woman is upset or enraged, we have to be what I call sexy enraged, right? We our enragement has to be sexy. It has to be measured. It has to be just enough aggression that it's okay for you, but it's not messy and ugly and all those things. And so my thing is the biggest way I feel like you can champion Black women in this moment is give us our range of emotions back. Let me be all of the things that it means to be a woman so I can experience those feelings. Because right now, what you're telling me is that to be Black, I have to be angry. I have to be aggressive. What happens if I'm not aggressive? What happens if I am more of a timid woman? Does that make me less Black? And so those are the things for me is really giving us our range of emotions back.
Yes, I agree with both of you. Also, this idea of humanizing us. We are not myths. You know, we're flesh and bone. We're real people. We have real emotions. We have real aims, real dreams. And then also to get rid of this idea that there's only room for one of us. Because I can go into departments and half of the members in that department are white men. So what's the idea of only one of them? So we need to get rid of this idea of there can only be one of us because we are not monolith.
But I think one of the biggest reasons Alice they only want one of us, and this is just how I really feel about it, is because science has now proven what we already know. All of us came from a Black woman, right? Black women have the Eve gene, and what they know deep down. My father used to tell me this all the time, and I didn't really get it, and I'm starting to get it at a whole nother level now. He was like, the problem is that we don't know who we are. They know who we are. The problem is we don't know who we are. They know who we are, and that's why they're afraid. They have every reason to be afraid because they know that you're the creator, right? I said on another podcast that I sat on is that white folks invent things, we create them, and there's a difference. Creation means there's nothing, and now I've taken nothing and made it something. They invent, which means that they take what we've created it and patent it, or they invent a structure. Or they invent a structure where they can then take ownership of it, right? Going back to these two women that have outed themselves, right? They've created a class inside of academia that's race scholarship. That's what they've invented, right? What Black scholars really do is we create things. We take things from other disciplines. We create theories. We observe what's around us, right? Which is why our theory is grounded in experience and not just something that makes us smart. Right? And so that's what it really is. They don't want a whole bunch of us in there because they know that we are the true creators. And they've invented a space for them to survive. And if they let too many of us in there, we will create a space where they can no longer exist.
Mm-hmm. Woo! Mm-hmm. You know what, sister? I appreciate you and your fire. I remember years ago, I was dancing in the Mert Park, and an older sister came to me and she said, whatever happens, never allow anybody to lose your fire. Allow you to lose your fire. And I pass that on to you. Just know that you have an army of women and brothers that back that and celebrate that. And that's, I think, also important in the professional space, that those who I think rock with the same tribe or the same voice, let's support each other more. We need you. It's an all hands on deck situation. Alice, I know Dr. Nicholas as Alice the poet. It is just an honor to see our evolution as non-traditional students, and to continue on, and because of the, I guess maybe the natural melanin. We are a particular age, but we can still hang with it. I can still drop it. I got to brace up my knee, but I can still drop it.
Right. I get back up a little bit slower, but yeah.
But I can still drop it. So, Sherice, I don't have anything else to say. Alice, do you have anything else to say?
I really appreciate this conversation.
We need to do this more often, as a matter of fact. So I look forward to seeing you on another show of The Remedy. This is Arc Republic. I thank Dr. Sherice Janaye Nelson for coming, and Dr. Alice Nicholas for participating in, I think, a very timely and needed conversation about when white women pose as Black academics in the academy. This is a sad state of affairs. But thank y'all for coming.
We got the cure, we got the answer to what's happening in society. We got the power to solutions and provide the healing that you need. We got the cure, we got the answer with discussions that will set you free. This is the Arc Republic, and you're listening to The Remedy. The Remedy. The Remedy.